Some of you may have heard of the Great Reset.
What is the Great Reset?
Reset.
So that
Is it a version of the New World Order? Is that what they're changing the name to?
You know how I feel about political outlooks and differences in political outlooks. I don't think it's a weakness. I think it's a strength. And I think America needs to get back to being able to have a conversation with people who don't agree. We learn so much from each other when we do that. You, I think, are going to hear and learn and question and disagree, or perhaps really agree, like very few podcasts will push you to. You're going to learn an awful lot.
Rare. Very rare.
It is artificial intelligence behind technological mind control. What happens is an AI is computing while doing thought surveillance on a target. The AI has data clouds that are comprised of different things to do to someone. When the AI decides to mind control someone, technology will suppress natural thinking while the brain is controlled via electromagnetic methods. The shadow government AI is very sophisticated.
So the American children go to school and they have no idea what all this was about. Neither do the college students. Neither do the graduate college students.
Agenda 2030 is deeply secret.
But unfortunately, the way we have to organize ourselves with all these different players in the world is around this kind of language. And it ends up with people going, Agenda 2030 is deeply secret, it's deeply conspiratorial.
But is it fair to say, though, Adrian, that there is an agenda? It might not be nefarious and it might be perfectly reasonable, but there is over there at the World Economic Forum, along with the man that started it, Klaus and the like.
Klaus, yeah.
You have an idea of what you want the world to look like, and you are trying to shape it in his eyes or in his ideology and the ideology of the forum.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's a good old-fashioned German from the 1940s and 50s, basically. So he grew up in a ruined country where business had to put society first. You couldn't just say, well, sorry, Germany can stay collapsed. We'll just turn our backs on it and make a buck.
Many of us are being called horrible names, and they're putting us out of business now because of who we support or how we vote or what we believe. We're also not the ones getting the bailouts, the big business, the connected business, the global business. So here's the thing on that. We can't seem to produce growth because we're being told to stay home. We're being told to shut down our business. We're being told all through regulation that is coming under this new administration.
So you couldn't go out and tax the peasants to keep the country running.
And so he has this idea that business is about more than just making money, that it's a kind of stakeholder capitalism idea, which he's been banging on about for 50 years and sort of finally has become a little bit trendy.
And it would be if that was anything like what we said.
Although, not with an 84-year-old German probably behind it. But it's finally people are kind of liking the idea of, businesses ought to stand for something a bit more.
We pointed out in our own words, they were planning on taking advantage of it.
You can't add on top of that distrust, abuse, and theft. With the technological boom that is coming.
The hedge funds conferences was because this is what I was saying. Of course, everyone knew this. People would say, well, I don't understand what you're not profiting from. I don't understand. Well, look, the party will go until it's over.
That agenda is about as far as you can go. That's really where it is.
But that's not what we said. We never said.
It's not a lack of food, it's a lack of distribution. A quarter of all the food in grocery stores is thrown away.
They did not create it.
And does that include being concerned about climate change? It does. If you happen to not believe in climate change, then sorry, we tend to take the scientific evidence and say, well, we probably ought to try and do something about it. The other side of it is trying to warn people about long-term stuff, because what the forum sees is we try and look at long-term risks that people don't talk about, which is why We get involved in talking about things like pandemic risk.
Quote, the baseless, again, conspiracy theory known as the Great Reset, which claims a group of world leaders orchestrated the pandemic to take control of the global economy. Now that sounds pretty nuts.
What the hell was that all about, right?
All the media has to do is simply go to the World Economic Forum's Great Reset webpage, God forbid, read for yourself.
Transnational elites interact as a class of people. They know each other often personally. They do business together, and they either know each other personally or know of each other. They have similar educational and lifestyle backgrounds. They share common global interests. They meet in non-governmental policy organizations and form new ones as needs arise to privately make decisions for global governance institutions to implement. Transnational elites hold a common ideology of being the engineers of global capitalism, a firm belief that their way of life and continuing global capital is best for all humankind.
The World Economic Forum orchestrated the pandemic.
Folks, it's too dangerous to meet anymore. We've got to split up. I suggest you take what supplies you can carry.
What does this look like? A bowling ball?
Oh, very funny.
Which is theirs. So why don't we just listen? There's the head of the World Economic Forum. His name is Klaus Schwab.
What does this look like? A bowling ball?
Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight the severe virus, but to shape the system for the need for the post-corona era. But we have another choice. We can build a new social contract. In short, we need a great reset.
Cancelled.
Yeah, not half as funny as being unemployed.
What?
Study.
Me. I can't handle the
Financial money managers
anymore.
Honey.
Yes.
Oh, swell, what? And I have been laid off. Do any damage? Beats me. That last shot.
Financial money manager.
He's been axed.
An AI is computing while doing thought surveillance on a target.
I want to go to
Bill Gates.
Oh, no, I am in no mood to be preached at. That is the last thing I need.
But the transnational capital elite takes pride in pointing out that they have the largest middle class ever. That's the 20%, but that doesn't extend down into the rest of the world, and they are getting poorer every day.
62 people hold as much wealth as half the world.
You just signed your death warrant.
What's your name? Diego Rivera.
All they did was attack anyone that was raising warnings.
There's Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, Mancias Ortega from Spain, William Buffett from Berkshire Hathaway, Jeff Bezos, Carlos Slim from Telecom in Mexico. Those are the multi-billionaires.
They attack people. They don't talk about ideas.
Yeah, where have you been?
Mexico City, and Rockefeller didn't like it. Diego Rivera now resides in this mural that he had certain figures in there in 1934. It was first done at the Rockefeller Center and destroyed the entire mural.
As a conspiracy theorist, I really suck because they seem to happen.
The LA Times reports this year that 795 million people on the planet who suffer from chronic hunger And they're forecasting that 2 billion people will be lacking food by 2050.
On their website, they clearly spell out how they plan to use COVID to kick off fundamental changes to society and capitalism, aka the Great Reset.
What the hell was that all about, right? Holy shit, I don't know how to feel.
I'm going to talk about the global power elite, the giants of capitalism.
Donald Trump sort of looks like someone playing a president in a porno.
We have experience. We see things and they either make sense or they don't make sense. And what the scientists do is substitute our common sense and our intuition for calculations and theory.
It's not just that he's the worst person for the job, he might be the worst mammal.
But when you actually looked at the ground, when you looked at the Earth, well, it was New Mexico. That's where he jumped. The whole Earth that you saw there was New Mexico. And if you spin a gyroscope on a surface, it will want to stay upright. You can twist and tilt the surface as much as you like, the gyroscope will stay upright. The thing is, what the scientists will give you is calculations and and theories. And we're supposed to believe the calculations rather than what we experience ourselves. But the fact is, it's perfectly flat, and he's many experiments that show the Earth is always perfectly flat. They say that you see the mast, go down last. It's literally just the way your vision works. It's perspective and atmospherics, basically. The limit of your vision is supposedly 3 miles, and then after 3 miles you're supposed to see the boat start to go over the horizon. It's funny that Neil deGrasse Tyson again.
I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, bitch.
Literally, it's a money-making scheme. Explains that you can't see the curvature of the Earth from a plane. He says this. You can't see the curvature of the Earth from a plane because you're not high enough. The Earth is so big that you can't get high enough to see the curvature. Yet, you can apparently see a boat go over the curvature, over the distance of 3 miles, which doesn't make sense. The thing is, when you look out and you see a boat start to go over the horizon, if you suddenly get a pair of binoculars and look, it comes back again. And once it goes out of the sight of your binoculars, if you get a telescope, it comes back again. It doesn't go over any curve of the horizon. What we found, many people have done experiments with very high-powered zoom cameras, and they've watched a boat sail out to sea, and they've just kept trained on this boat. And what they see is, after a very long distance, you see an atmospheric effect where the bottom of the boat disappears and and the top of the boat inverts, so you see a sort of mirror image. And that, with your eyesight, basically the bottom of the boat just melts into the horizon. It was fake. It was fake. It was absolutely fake. There's not too many people involved in this. I mean, but it's no less ridiculous than nothing exploding and becoming something. If you look at it objectively, they try to make you believe that the idea that a supreme being, a creator, created this is ridiculous compared to that idea.
They don't have new ideas. That is the purview of the other team, and it's all about that now. And the reality is, right, left, red, and blue. The liberal movement within whatever country it is. But the key thing that we need to take away from this video I mean, other than the laughs. But that's not saying much. Well, no, this person's a leftist. I don't have to listen to them. Even if you're a political pundit with millions of followers, you can just take your microphone off and throw it down, not listen. That bumper sticker politics. To shut down and immediately not debate, not discuss anything. Because they're from the Republican Party. Their whole modus operandi is to maintain the status quo, to enforce more government regulation. You know, they pride themselves against small government. Name one Republican administration in which the government shrank. It's not the case. So that's what I hope people really see.
Thank you, Professor. I think that the organizers of this meeting are to be congratulated on their brio and also, I think, on their timing. We are met today as witnesses of the decomposition of a political regime in this capital city, which uses the language of capitalism and of free enterprise, employs the ideology of selfishness and self-interest, and stresses the rhetoric of laissez-faire, while bloating and expanding the role of the state, debauching the treasury and the currency, and relying upon a state within a state for the secret conduct of most policy. There may, and I think there will not be, any convergence of ideas between socialist and capitalist schools this evening, but this need not prevent us, I think, from seeing that a regime may combine the basest features of statism and collectivism with the basest elements of utilitarianism and libertarianism too. And I think if we recognize that, we may have ground for debate. What is it, I better get on with it, to be a socialist? Necessary conditions in my submission, rather than sufficient ones, must include the following. It is necessary to hold, firstly, that all divisions of class, nation, race, and sex are, in the last resort, man-made and can be man-unmade, are in no sense part of a divine or natural ordinance, and that we are members, like it or no, of one race, the human race. That civilization is, in fact, second, a cooperative enterprise, whether the cooperation is coerced, as it was in most of recorded history, or voluntary, as has been occasionally found and can still be found in our century. But that it is a cooperative enterprise cannot be denied. There is no other means, that's to say, of civilization. Third, that the limits of creative endeavor are set by the limits of nature, and that very few human actions can therefore be said in the last instance to be entirely private. The earth is, in point of fact, a common treasury, as the English levelers used to say in the Puritan Revolution, hoping that it were so. It is, in fact, the case, and again, whether we like it or not, whether we care to treat it as such or not. Fourth, that there is no God and no supernatural, that this recognition obliges us morally to maximize the felicity of the one life that we are permitted. And fifth, that the principle of from each according to his ability or her ability, and to each according to his or her need, is an easily realizable one, prefigured already in human society by the working principles of the bourgeois family. That unique engine of thrift, enterprise, the transmission of morality, operates precisely on the principle of from each according to his or her ability and to each according to his or her need. There is, in fact, no other way that a family could decently or possibly be run. I make no moral judgment as between the decency and the possibility. Such a distinction would be odious. Marxists describe freedom as the recognition of necessity, and only then proceed to say that the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all, a stipulation that obviously implies its corollary, that the educator must be educated. That's why I stress the above as necessary conditions rather than sufficient ones. We do not ask for these things to be true. We might even prefer them not to be, but we must recognize them as given and as such. Sufficient conditions, I think, center on the question of class. Marxists recognize that history is indeed the contest of competing social forces, and that so is the present such a competition. All attempts to describe society as merely organic and harmonious, or as a free competition or race between individuals with differing attainments and endowments, fail, because they ignore this simple and obvious fact, which again we do not preach we simply recognize, insist upon, and make as a point of departure. We do not preach morality at all. They do not put to people the moral demand, love one another, do not be egotists, etc. On the contrary, they are very well aware that egoism, just as much as selflessness, is in definite circumstances a necessary form of the self-assertion of individuals. I think this shows clearly enough that Marxists understand what Randians term, as if they discovered it, the virtue of selfishness. But as Marx and Engels also wrote in the same period in their Holy Family, they saw the need for selfishness to be transcended. I'm quoting again directly from the Holy Family, 1845 also. If enlightened self-interest is the principle of all morality, man's private interest must be made to coincide with the interest of humanity. If man is shaped by environment, his environment must be made human. It is on this apparent paradox that we take our stand. And against the neo-Kantians, the early Marxists argued that morality could not be derived from abstract first principles of recht or right, but had to correspond to the real conditions of society. Nowadays, I think this argument seems quaint in its intensity and fervor, because evolution itself, and specifically the evolution of modern capitalism into a new symbiosis with the state, has borne in upon the dullest mind the recognition that if humanity does not yet think in terms of a common destiny, it has at least had to think in terms of a common fate. To put it at its most vulgar materialist level, we are all collectivized by the same ozone layer. The thermonuclear world is a great leveler, and just as there can be no purely moral, conscientious objection in a thermonuclear conflict, nor can there be any merely ethical or self-interested collaboration with it. Everybody, after all, in this auditorium is a uniformed conscript. You cannot conscientiously object to the nuclear conscription that has made of each of you soldiers and put you in the front line while the real soldiers are in the bunker. This recognition of reality enforces a sense of collective humanity upon us. Again, we do not preach this, we recognize it. Socialism, said Oscar Wilde, would free us from the distressing necessity of living for others. The feelings of compassion and solidarity and responsibility, after all, are no less instinct in our species than those of self-interest. It's precisely because these instincts of solidarity and compassion represent a human need, a need to be of help to others, a point very well made by Professor Richard Titmuss in his famous book, The Gift Relationship. Because they are a need, there is no need to make the sentimental presumption of altruism or to wrestle with the tautology that altruism represents. And in fact, few proponents of the capitalist system have ever summarized its virtues, those of creativity, innovation, the bursting of feudal and antique tribal fetters, as well as Marx did. But Marx and Engels also saw what's since become obvious, that capitalism is not the last word, and that in freeing mankind from ancient obligations, it made him a prisoner of market forces which also developed their own mythology and ideology, their own mystification, and their own bondage. I also believe that capitalism is the harbinger of socialism, that it's necessary not merely to contest or negate its ethical claims, but to transcend them, to build upon them. And from this, if I may coin a phrase, dialectic, I think we might get a truly human and unillusioned morality that was free from superstition or religion. On that realizable aspiration, I rest my case. Thank you.
I hope this isn't the last time you will join me, because I'd love to hear more of your thoughts. Thank you so much. I have to tell you,
Big Marijuana, Big Mistake, Vote No on 2 campaign says ballot measure 2 has nothing to do with medical marijuana patients.
Well, medical marijuana is legal in Alaska, and we do feel like there should be a conversation about medical marijuana, but that's not what this ballot measure is about.
But the Alaska Cannabis Club maintains ballot measure 2 has everything to do with medical marijuana, and they say they'll be working to ensure the measure passes in the coming weeks.
Now, everything you heard is why I, the actual owner of the Alaska Cannabis Club, will be dedicating all of my energy toward fighting for freedom and fairness, which begins with legalizing marijuana here in Alaska. And as for this job, well, Not that I have a choice, but fuck it, I quit.
All right, we apologize for that. We'll be right back. Pardon for us. Meanwhile, the Vote Yes on 2 campaign held a fundraiser last night with Gary Johnson, the CEO of one of the largest cannabis businesses in the nation, who is also a former New Mexico governor.
George Bush went public after I published this book. It had been published for about almost a year, and I'd sold maybe 100 copies because I never advertised my books. They were never reviewed. Nobody paid attention to it. And George Bush Sr. was president at that time. And in November of whatever year it was, he started going on the television and talking about the New World Order. And of course, the only book on the World Order is my book. So I sold out immediately, which was very disconcerting because I have no publishing company and I had to go and print another edition. And so it's out of print again right now. But people are begging for copies. In fact, they sell copies on the internet for very large sums, because it's the only book. Well, right now they're capable of staying on top of the current, and they have enough money to buy into anything they want to. So they're trying to keep control. But of course, they have no control over the internet. Anything can come on the internet. And so they're just trying to ride it out.
God go with you, each of you.
Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to him belong.
Any ideas?
Yep, got it all figured out. A place that's guaranteed pug-proof.
Those who believe themselves to be free disregard the fact that to be governed in the modern world is to be watched, inspected, spied upon, directed, law-driven, numbered, regulated, enrolled, indoctrinated, preached at, controlled, checked, estimated, valued, censored, and commanded by beings who have neither the right, nor the wisdom, nor the virtue to do so.
And I want to do it non-condescendingly because I'm not in a position to condescend. I've screwed up enough in this story. But look, I've been here the whole time and I've been telling you, you guys are right about the center-left media. It's gone completely insane. It's denying reality. It's gaslighting you. You're not wrong about that.
So that's why Orville Slump is picnicking alone today. He watched the signals, he rode alone, he stayed on the right side of the street, got a license, rode just like auto drivers drive. But then, as anyone can plainly see, he wasn't a monkey, right? Now, that sounds as if you really mean it, right?
By the way, a genius move, if I may say so, because sitting on the bench was a terrible move. It was incredibly disrespectful. It's a way of communicating a certain form of respect.
I hope this makes you nervous.
We can build a new social contract. In short, we need a great reset.